Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm 5'7", from a small town outside Portland, and this is my story of betrayal, resilience, and sweet revenge. The scent of lavender and vanilla filled our small apartment kitchen as I carefully poured another batch of homemade wax into my thrift store molds. What a waste of time. My husband Mark sneered, leaning against the doorframe with that familiar look of contempt. Nobody's going to pay for your little craft projects, Sarah. I was working a dead-end admin job, and making candles was the only thing that brought me joy in a marriage that had long since burned out. This is how those little craft projects became Luminous Legacy, now a multi-million-dollar brand sold in stores nationwide, and how the man who laughed at my dreams wasn't invited along for the ride. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone uses your biggest insecurity as fuel to build an empire? If this story resonates with you, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences of turning criticism into motivation in the comments below. I wasn't always just Mark's wife or the quiet admin assistant at Portland Regional Insurance. There was a time when I was Sarah Winters, a girl with dreams and passions, but somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that person. My love affair with candles began in my grandmother Eleanor's kitchen when I was 8. She taught me how different scents could transport you to different memories. Lavender for calm, cinnamon for warmth, citrus for energy. Scents are powerful magic, Sarah, she'd say while showing me how to dip wicks. They can heal hearts and bring comfort when words fail. After she passed, I inherited her collection of essential oils and handwritten recipes. They sat untouched in a box for years until that particularly dark winter, 3 years into my marriage with Mark. I was drowning in spreadsheets by day, and his indifference by night. Our apartment felt cold despite the heating. One evening, while Mark was at his weekly poker game, I unearthed Grandma Eleanor's box. The familiar scents brought tears to my eyes immediately, comfort in a life that had become uncomfortable. That night, I made my first candle in 15 years using a soup can and leftover wax. It wasn't pretty, but lighting it felt like reconnecting with a part of myself I'd abandoned. Soon, I was spending every spare dollar on supply soy wax instead of paraffin, cotton wicks, essential oils, vintage containers from thrift stores. I'd wake up early before work to experiment with scent combinations. Gradually, our apartment filled with my creations. Mark noticed, of course. The place smells like a hippie shop, he'd complained. Opening windows, even in winter. I started hiding my better creations in my closet, wrapped in tissue paper. My small treasures, my secret rebellion. During lunch breaks, I'd research techniques on my phone, proper melting temperatures, cure times, fragrance loads. I ordered books on aromatherapy and natural perfumery, reading them in the bathroom with the door locked. One Wednesday night, after particularly harsh criticism from Mark about dinner, I stayed up until 3 a.m. perfecting what would become my signature scent: timber, vanilla, and a hint of cedar. I called it Homecoming in my notebook, though I never spoke the name aloud. The next morning, despite exhaustion, I felt different. The candle cooling on our kitchen counter represented something I'd created entirely from my own vision, for no one's pleasure but my own. When Mark left for work, I placed it on our coffee table and lit it, watching the flame dance as I sipped my coffee. The warm, comforting scent filled our living room, and I felt something I hadn't in years: pride. That evening, Mark came home, sniffed the air, and actually paused. "That's different," he said, the closest thing to approval I'd heard in months. I said nothing, but inwardly, something sparked, not his validation, but the realization that I'd created something that commanded attention, that altered a space that couldn't be ignored. That night, I ordered business cards that simply read Sarah's Candles with my email address. I had no plan yet, but something was taking shape in my mind, fragile as a flame, but persistent. "Your grandmother would be proud," I whispered to myself as I fell asleep. Mark's back turned to me as usual. This is just the beginning. I didn't know then how right I was, or how that small flame would grow into a fire that would eventually illuminate my escape from a life that had become too small to contain me. 2 months and dozens of candles later, our spare room had transformed into my unofficial workshop. I'd become expert at timing my candle making around Mark's scheduled pouring wax when he worked late, curing candles while he watched football, packaging during his weekend golf games. "Just need to clean out some old stuff," I'd explained when he questioned the growing collection of supplies. He'd shrugged, uninterested as always in anything that didn't directly involve him. Late one night, after Mark had fallen asleep, I created an Etsy shop on my laptop. My hands trembled as I uploaded photos of my 12 best designs, taken with my phone against white poster board. I named the shop Winter's Warmth, my maiden name feeling like a small reclamation of self. I wrote descriptions highlighting the natural ingredients, the hand-poured process, the unique scent combinations. I priced them modestly $15 for the smaller ones, $22 for the larger and hit publish before I could second-guess myself. Then I waited. 3 days passed. Nothing. I checked my phone constantly, disappointment growing. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe no one would pay for my little craft projects. Then, while filing insurance claims at work, my phone pinged, an order notification. Someone named Michelle from Seattle had purchased my forest cabin candle. I nearly knocked my coffee over, reading the notification 3 times to be sure. Someone wanted something I had made. Someone was willing to pay for my creation. I slipped away to the bathroom and did a silent dance in the stall, tears pricking my eyes. That night, I carefully packaged Michelle's candle in craft paper, adding a handwritten thank you note and a small dried flower. I felt like I was sending a piece of myself into the world. Within 2 weeks, I'd sold 6 more candles. Small numbers, but each sale sent a thrill through me that I hadn't felt in years. I created a separate email account for the business and a dedicated bank account, depositing my modest earnings with ceremonial pride. "You seem different lately," Mark commented one evening, glancing up from his phone. "Getting your hair done or something?" "Just trying something new," I replied, hiding my smile behind my wine glass. The truth was, I felt different. Each night, after he fell asleep, I'd check my shop, adjust descriptions, research shipping options, and plan new scents. I'd carved out a world that was entirely mine, one where my ideas mattered, where my work had value. Jenny, from accounting, discovered my secret when she caught me checking order notifications during lunch. "Sarah Winters, wait, are these yours?" she exclaimed, peering at my phone. "My sister bought your spring rain candle last week. She's obsessed with it." My face flushed. "Please don't tell anyone here," I begged. Jenny's eyes widened. "Why not? They're amazing. Does your husband help you with the business side?" I laughed a little too sharply. "Mark doesn't exactly see it as a business." Jenny's expression softened. "With understanding, men can be like that. My ex used to call my photography a cute hobby too." She squeezed my arm. "His loss. Your candles are beautiful." She became my first repeat customer, then my informal marketing department, showing my candles to friends and family. Orders trickled in more steadily. I started waking at 5 a.m. to fulfill them before work. My small operation expanding to our balcony when weather permitted. My hands constantly smelled of essential oils, and I often found wax under my fingernails during important meetings. But for the first time in years, I felt alive. Every ping on my phone, every 5-star review, every repeat customer was validation that Mark had been wrong. My little craft projects were becoming something more. And the best part, he had no idea. The holiday season hit like a tidal wave. What had been a manageable 10 orders per week suddenly became 15, then 30, then 50 as November rolled into December. Jenny had convinced me to create special holiday collections: Winter Hearth, Midnight Snow, Fireside Bourbon, which sold out within days of listing. Our apartment no longer just smelled like a hippie shop. It had become a full production facility. I was melting wax in our kitchen while packaging orders in the living room, storing supplies in the bedroom closet, and curing candles on every available surface. "What the hell is happening to our apartment?" Mark demanded one evening, nearly tripping over a box of shipping supplies in the hallway. "This has gotten out of control, Sarah." I was exhausted, having slept barely 4 hours a night for weeks. But the $4,000 sitting in my business account gave me courage I hadn't felt in years. "It's not out of control. It's a business. My business." Mark laughed that dismissive laugh I'd grown to hate. "A business? Come on, Sarah, it's crafts. You're not exactly Yankee Candle." "I made more from my crafts last month than I did at the insurance company," I replied, continuing to wrap a candle in tissue paper. His expression shifted from amusement to concern. "You're not thinking of quitting your job over this, are you?" "We need reliable income." We need both incomes because you spent $6,000 on golf clubs last year, I muttered. Mark's face darkened. That's different. That's an investment in client relationships. This is also an investment, I interrupted, in myself. The argument that followed wasn't our first, but it had a different energy. For once, I wasn't backing down. My candles were selling. People loved them. I had proof that my passion had value, actual, measurable, monetary value. The breaking point came during Christmas week. I'd received a bulk order from a local gift shop, 40 candles needed within 5 days. Our kitchen looked like a laboratory. Explosion, with wax on every surface, and fragrance oils lined up along the backsplash. Mark came home early from work to find me frantically pouring my 20th candle of the day. Enough, he shouted, slamming his briefcase down. This isn't a factory. We can't live like this. He was right about one thing: I couldn't keep operating from our apartment. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt clarity. I need a workspace, I said simply. What you need is to get a grip, he retorted. This little hobby is taking over your life. I looked around at the chaos, the manifestation of my passion, my growing success, my independence, and made a decision. I'm going to look at rental spaces next week. Mark stared at me like I'd suggested moving to Mars. With what money? My money, I replied. From my business. The look of disbelief on his face should have hurt me, but instead, it fueled me. He truly couldn't fathom that my little craft projects could generate enough income to justify expansion. I spent the remainder of the holiday season researching commercial spaces while fulfilling the last of my orders. I dipped into my personal savings, the money I'd been quietly setting aside for years. My emergency fund that Mark knew nothing about. A small former art studio in the industrial district caught my eye. 800 square feet, concrete floors, perfect for wax spills, good ventilation, and most importantly, affordable. Using 3 months of candle profits, plus my savings, I put down a deposit and signed a 6-month lease. I didn't tell Mark immediately. I finished the holiday orders, delivered them, and collected payment. Then I started moving my supplies, bit by bit, when he wasn't home. Only when the last box of wax was out of our apartment did I leave the lease agreement on the kitchen counter for him to find. His text came at 6:42 p.m. We need to talk when I get home. I was already at my new studio, pouring a fresh batch of candles. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't waiting anxiously for his return, worried about his mood, his judgment, his approval. Yes, I texted back, we definitely do. The Portland Artisan Market wasn't something I'd planned to attend. Jenny had signed me up, paid the booth fee as a business investment, and practically dragged me there on a rainy Saturday in February. Can't hide in your studio forever, she insisted, helping me arrange my display of 36 carefully curated candles. People need to see your face, connect with your story. I wasn't convinced anyone would care about either, but I'd learned to trust Jenny's instincts. By midday, I'd sold half my inventory and collected a stack of business cards from customers requesting custom orders. I was wrapping a large mountain mist candle when a stylishly dressed woman in her 50s approached, picking up several candles and studying them intently. These are exceptional, she said, closing her eyes to inhale the scent. The fragrance, complexity is remarkable. Are you the maker? Yes, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I'm Sarah, Diane Mercer, she said, extending her hand. I own Evergreen Home Collective on Northwest 23rd. My heart skipped. Evergreen was Portland's premier home goods boutique, the kind of place I'd window shop but never enter. Your work belongs in my shop, she continued. I'd like to start with 24, featuring your signature scents. We can discuss terms now if you have time. My mind raced. 24 candles was my largest order yet. Besides the holiday rush, could I fulfill it while maintaining quality? What were terms? Should I negotiate? What would a real business owner do? That sounds wonderful, I managed. Let me give you my card. Perhaps we could meet at my studio next week to discuss details. The words came from somewhere outside myself, a version of Sarah I was still getting to know. Diane smiled approvingly. Perfect. Tuesday at 10. I nodded, trying to contain the earthquake happening inside me. That evening, alone in my studio, Mark had barely spoken to me since the lease revelation. I called the one person who might understand what was happening. Mom, I think I'm starting a real business. My mother's enthusiasm was immediate and uncomplicated. Of course you are, honey. You've always had your grandmother's talent. Remember those rose-scented sachets you made for my birthday when you were 12? I still have one in my drawer. Mark thinks I'm being irresponsible, I admitted, the words sticking in my throat. A pause. Sarah, I've never said this before, but Mark has never truly seen you, not the real you. The truth of her words settled over me like a warm blanket. Mom had always been tactfully silent about my marriage, respecting my choices even when she disagreed. I'm starting to see myself again, I whispered. 3 days later, Diane Mercer sat in my studio, nodding approvingly as I showed her my process. We agreed on wholesale pricing, delivery schedules, and packaging specifications. She would take 12 cents, 2 of each, with the option to reorder based on performance. You should consider rebranding, she suggested, examining my simple winter's warmth labels, something that reflects the premium quality of your product. This is luxury tier craftsmanship. As she left, she introduced me to her friend Vivian Chen, who had been waiting in the car. Vivian mentors female entrepreneurs. She helped me scale Evergreen from a cart to 3 locations. You two should talk. Vivian's handshake was firm, her gaze direct. Diane doesn't give compliments lightly. I'd be happy to share some insights over coffee sometime. That coffee meeting changed everything. Vivian asked questions no one had ever asked me. What was my 5-year vision? What made my candles unique? Who was my ideal customer? What were my margins? What did success look like to me? I stumbled through answers, realizing how much I still needed to learn. But instead of feeling inadequate, I felt exhilarated. You have something special, Vivian said, but you're thinking too small. This isn't a side hustle, Sarah. This could be a legacy brand. Legacy, the word, echoed in my mind all the way home. Mark was waiting when I arrived, his expression thunderous. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. I hadn't even noticed the missed calls. Meeting with a business mentor. He scoffed. A business mentor? For candles? Sarah, this has gone far enough. The rent on that studio is money we could be saving for a house. I paid that rent with my earnings, I reminded him. And I just landed a wholesale account with Evergreen Home Collective. So what? It's still just candles. It's not a career. In that moment, everything crystallized. Mark would never see value in what I was building because he couldn't see value in me. To validate my business would mean acknowledging my worth independent of him. It's not just candles, I said quietly. It's my future. And I'm starting to realize that future might not include you. The words hung between us, impossible to take back. Mark's face registered shock, then anger, then most surprisingly fear. For the first time in our marriage, I had said aloud what we'd both felt for years, and now that it was spoken, nothing would ever be the same. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Mark and I orbited each other in our apartment, the air heavy with unspoken words. I spent most of my time at the studio, fulfilling Diane's order and implementing Vivian's suggestions for improved packaging and branding. I came home late one evening to find Mark waiting, a glass of wine poured for each of us. A peace offering. I've been thinking, he said, his voice gentler than it had been in months. Maybe I've been too hard on you. If this candle thing makes you happy, I can try to be more supportive. Relief washed over me until, he continued. But you need to be realistic. Keep it small, manageable. Maybe cut back to weekends only. Your real job needs to come first. And there it was. He was willing to tolerate my passion as long as it remained small, contained, secondary. As long as it didn't threaten the hierarchy of our relationship. Diane from Evergreen has placed a second order, I said quietly. Double the size of the first. Have also been approached by 2 other boutiques. I can't scale back, Mark. This is happening. His expression hardened. So, what are you saying? You're choosing candles over our marriage. That's not the choice you're giving me, I replied, suddenly tired of the pretense. You're asking me to choose between my potential and your comfort. Between my dreams and your control. Mark slammed his glass down. This is ridiculous. You're throwing away our future over a hobby. No, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I'm building a future you can't envision because it doesn't revolve around you. The argument escalated from there, old grievances surfacing, years of resentment boiling over. When Mark finally delivered his ultimatum, it's me or the business, Sarah, the choice was surprisingly easy. I choose me, I whispered. 3 days later, I moved into the small storage room above my studio. It wasn't legal as a residence, strictly speaking, but the building owner looked the other way when I installed a shower curtain around the utility sink and brought in a futon. My new home was barely 200 square feet, with exposed pipes and concrete floors, but it was mine. Every morning I woke to the scent of my own creation, descended the stairs to my workspace, and built my business one candle at a time. Mark's texts oscillated between anger and disbelief. "You're being ridiculous. Come home. You can't seriously be living in a storage room. This is financial suicide. Think about your future." I let our apartment lease expire, moved my remaining belongings into a small storage unit, and filed for divorce with money from my growing business account. Mark contested it immediately. "She's having a breakdown," he told our friends, his family, even my mother. "She's thrown away our marriage for some delusional business fantasy." Some believed him. My in-laws certainly, a few mutual friends who'd only ever known me as Mark's quiet wife, but others, mostly women, send me private messages of support. "I left my husband to start my photography business 10 years ago," wrote an acquaintance from college. "Best decision I ever made. Stay strong." The hardest moment came when I had to list our marital assets for the divorce proceedings: our checking account, Mark's 401k, my small retirement fund, his car, our furniture. Under business asset, I listed Winter's Warmth LLC, with its current valuation modest but growing. Seeing it there, in black and white, official and undeniable, brought unexpected tears. Not of sadness, but of validation. My business was real, legitimate, worth fighting for. "You really think your little candle shop is an asset?" Mark's lawyer smirked during our first mediation session. "Yes," I replied, meeting his gaze. "And it's no longer called Winter's Warmth." I slid a business card across the table. "It's Luminous Legacy now." The name had come to me during a late-night conversation with Vivian. "What do you want to build that will outlast this moment?" she'd asked. "What light are you bringing into the world?" My new logo featured a simple, elegant flame with subtle gradient coloring, capturing the moment when fire transforms from orange to blue, the point of perfect combustion, the moment of change. Just like me, Luminous Legacy needed to be more than just a new name. It needed to embody everything I was fighting for: quality, authenticity, transformation. Vivian connected me with a local graphic designer who understood my vision immediately. "Your candles tell stories," Alicia said during our first meeting. "The packaging should continue that narrative." Together, we developed a complete brand identity: clean, minimalist labels with subtle metallic accents, custom glass vessels instead of thrifted containers, embossed boxes with the flame logo debossed on heavyweight matte paper, each candle named not just for its scent profile but for its emotional resonance: awakening, sanctuary, reclamation. The rebrand doubled my production costs, but Vivian was adamant. "Luxury positioning commands luxury pricing. Your $25 candle is now a $45 candle, and the right customers will recognize the value." She was right. Diane at Evergreen displayed the newly packaged Luminous Legacy collection on a dedicated table near the front window. "They sold out in 2 weekends. My customers are asking for more," she told me, "especially the reclamation scent. There's something about it that resonates deeply." I didn't tell her that reclamation had been created during my first week living above the studio, infused with my own journey of claiming space and identity. Cedar and vetiver for grounding, bergamot for courage, a hint of rose for the self-love I was still learning. With Diane's encouragement, I invested in professional product photography. The photographer, Alina, suggested we also shoot behind-the-scenes images of me hand-pouring candles, testing scent combinations, packaging orders. "People connect with makers," she explained. "They want to see the hands that craft their products." The idea of putting my face on my brand terrified me. For so long, I'd been conditioned to make myself smaller, less visible. Mark had always been the one in the spotlight at company parties, neighborhood gatherings, family events. I was the supportive wife in the background. "I'm not comfortable being the face of the brand," I admitted to Vivian over lunch. She studied me thoughtfully. "Your discomfort is exactly why you should do it. Your story is powerful, Sarah. Woman leaves unsupportive husband, builds luxury brand from scratch. That's marketing gold. It feels exploitative, using my divorce to sell candles. Not exploitative, authentic. You're not manufacturing a story to sell products. You're creating products that embody your authentic journey." So I agreed to the photo shoot. Alina captured me in my element, focused, passionate, surrounded by the tools of my craft. In one photo, sunlight streamed through the studio windows, catching the glass beakers where I mixed oils, creating prisms of light across my workspace. In another, I held a freshly poured candle up to the light, examining its clarity, my expression, one of complete absorption. When I saw the final images, I barely recognized myself, not because of styling or editing, but because I'd never seen myself through someone else's appreciative lens. The woman in these photos looked confident, skilled, at peace. She looked like someone I wanted to know. "These are perfect," I whispered. With the photography complete, we launched the official Luminous Legacy website. No more Etsy shop. Alicia designed a clean, sophisticated site with the product images front and center, supplemented by my story edited for public consumption but honest in its essence. I hired my first employee that same week, a part-time packaging assistant named Zoe, an art student who approached me after buying a candle at Evergreen. "I love what you're creating," she said. "If you ever need help, I'd work for candles." I paid her in cash and candles, teaching her my packaging standards, my attention to detail. She absorbed everything, asking insightful questions about fragrance, composition, and burn times. "You know," she said one afternoon, as we packaged an order for a new boutique in Seattle, "my mom went through something similar, left my dad to start her catering business. He said she'd fail within a year." "And did she?" I asked. Zoe grinned. "She did his company's holiday party last year. He had no idea until she walked out to introduce the menu." We laughed, but the story stayed with me. How many women had walked this path before me? How many had found their purpose only after breaking free from those who diminished it? The question lingered as I finalized the divorce paperwork, Mark's signature, a angry scrawl at the bottom of each page. It remained as I expanded from one part-time employee to 3, outgrowing my small studio within 6 months of rebranding. And it echoed loudly when a lifestyle blogger with 500,000 followers featured Luminous Legacy in her female-founded favorites gift guide, sending my website traffic soaring overnight. "Orders are coming in faster than we can fulfill them," I told Vivian, panic edging my voice. "This is growing too quickly." She smiled, that knowing smile that had become familiar. "No, Sarah, you're finally growing at exactly the right pace. This is just the beginning." I'd been running Luminous Legacy for 18 months when Alina convinced me to start an Instagram account for the brand. "Your products are visually stunning," she insisted. "Social media is the perfect showcase." Reluctantly, I agreed, posting occasional product photos and behind-the-scenes glimpses of production. Nothing personal, nothing about my journey. The account grew steadily but modestly to about 5,000 followers, respectable for a small luxury brand. Then came the night that changed everything. I was working late, experimenting with a new scent combination. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, leaving me emotionally drained but legally free. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark, the first in weeks. "Saw your candles at Evergreen today. Congratulations." I was wrong. 5 simple words. I was wrong. After 2 years of dismissal, mockery, and legal battles. This closest thing to an apology I would ever receive. I sat with the message for a long time, wondering what response would honor my journey without reopening old wounds. In the end, I simply replied, "Thank you for letting me know." But the exchange stirred something in me. That night, without overthinking, I opened Instagram and wrote a post that would transform my business. 3 years ago, my husband laughed when I started making candles in our kitchen. "Nobody will pay for your little craft projects," he said. Today, Luminous Legacy candles are sold in 24 retail locations across the Pacific Northwest. And I just signed our first national distribution deal. Sometimes the people closest to you can't see your light. Light it anyway. I added a simple photo of me in my new, larger studio space, surrounded by carefully packaged candles ready for shipment, and hit post before I could reconsider. By morning, the post had over 100,000 likes. By evening, 500,000, with thousands of comments flooding in. This is the sign I needed to leave my unsupportive relationship. Started my business after my divorce too. Best decision ever. Just bought 3 candles. Can't wait to support a woman who bet on herself. Media requests began pouring in. Local news, national morning shows, podcasts focused on female entrepreneurs. My story, it seemed, had struck a powerful chord. "You've tapped into something universal," Vivian explained when I called her in a panic. It's not just about candles or divorce. It's about women claiming their worth in a world that often diminishes it. The first major feature appeared in a national women's magazine. A full-page spread with the headline, "Let There Be Light: How Sarah Winters Turned Marital Mockery into a $1 Million Brand." The article was thoughtful, focusing more on my craftsmanship and business acumen than on the divorce, but it inevitably positioned Mark as the villain in my origin story. I felt uncomfortable with that framing but couldn't deny its accuracy. Orders exploded. Our small team of 5 couldn't keep pace. I hired 3 more people, all women, many with their own stories of reinvention. We still struggled to meet demand. "You need to scale production," Vivian advised. "Find a manufacturing partner who can maintain your quality standards while increasing output." The thought terrified me. Would Luminous Legacy still be handcrafted if I wasn't personally pouring each candle? Would the quality suffer? Would I be betraying my own story? "Your hands created the formulas, the scent profiles, the vision," Vivian reminded me. "You'll still oversee every aspect of production, but your business has outgrown your physical capacity to do it all yourself." She connected me with a small batch manufacturer in Oregon who specialized in luxury candles. After extensive testing and quality control discussions, I signed a production agreement that would quintuple our capacity while maintaining our standards. The first shipment from the new production facility arrived on the same day I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Sarah, it's Mark. Can we meet? I'd like to talk." My finger hovered over the delete button. Why now? What could he possibly want? I showed the message to Jenny, who'd become not just my first customer but my operations manager at Luminous Legacy. "He's seen the press," she said immediately. "He wants something." She was right, of course. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. After months of silence, Mark was reaching out just as Luminous Legacy was being featured in national media. I composed a response, deleted it, rewrote it several times. Finally, I settled on, "I'm not available to meet. Please direct any communication through my attorney." His reply came quickly. "This isn't about legal matters. I just want to talk. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." The words that once would have meant everything now rang hollow. I didn't need his pride or approval. I'd built something valuable despite his belief that I couldn't. "Thank you," I replied, "but I'm focused on moving forward." I set down my phone and turned to the shipment of perfectly produced candles before me. Each one an extension of my vision, my standards, my story. Each one proof that I'd been right to light my own way. Mark called twice more that week. I let the calls go to voicemail, then blocked his number entirely. Whatever he wanted, reconciliation, recognition, or a stake in my growing success, was no longer mine to give. My focus had to remain on the hundreds of thousands of people who had connected with my journey, who were now part of the Luminous Legacy story. Their support, not Mark's belated validation, was what mattered now. Success brought challenges I'd never anticipated. 6 months after the viral post, Luminous Legacy had expanded to 15 employees, a dedicated headquarters in Portland's Pearl District, and distribution in over 100 retail locations nationwide. But growth also meant vulnerability. One Tuesday morning, Jenny burst into my office, laptop in hand. "We have a problem," she announced, turning the screen toward me. "Someone's copying us." The website she showed me was eerily familiar, similar minimalist aesthetic, near product descriptions, and candles with names suspiciously close to ours. Awakening had become enlightenment. Reclamation was now restoration. "It gets worse," Jenny continued, scrolling down. "They're undercutting our prices by 40%, and their Instagram bio says, 'Founded by Sarah's former partner.'" My stomach dropped. I didn't need to ask who was behind this. "Marcus Candle Co.," I read aloud, the transparent play on his name both infuriating and pathetic. How original. Our attorney sent a cease and desist letter that same day, citing intellectual property infringement. Mark's response came via his newly hired lawyer. "My client has every right to enter the candle market. Any similarities are coincidental or industry standard." The legal battle dragged on for weeks, diverting my attention from more important matters, like our first major supply chain crisis. The Indonesian volcanic eruption had seemed like distant news until our wax supplier called. "Shipping routes are disrupted indefinitely. We can't fulfill your next 3 orders." With holiday season approaching and retail partners counting on timely delivery, I had 48 hours to find an alternative supplier who could meet our quality standards and ethical sourcing requirements. Vivian and I spent 2 sleepless nights contacting every connection in the industry. Finally, we secured a small batch supplier in Washington State who could meet half our needs, and another in California for the remainder. The cost was 30% higher than our previous supplier, squeezing already tight margins, but the alternative to retail partners and customers during our most important sales quarter was unthinkable. We'll absorb the cost, I decided. Quality and reliability have to come first. The crisis was barely resolved when another emerged, a TikTok video claiming Luminous Legacy candles contained harmful chemicals went viral, racking up millions of views before we could respond. The claims were entirely false. We used only natural, sustainably sourced ingredients and had documentation to prove it, but the damage was spreading hourly. We need to respond immediately, urged Alina, now our full-time creative director. Transparency is our only option. I filmed a video tour of our production facility, explaining each ingredient, its source, and our rigorous testing processes. We released the unedited footage along with our complete ingredient list and safety certifications. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many customers appreciating the behind-the-scenes look at our operation. Sales dipped briefly but recovered within weeks. What could have been catastrophic instead became an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to transparency. Later, we discovered the source of the TikTok video, a college student who'd been paid to post it by a competitor, not Mark this time, but a larger candle brand, threatened by our growing market share. These challenges taught me that success had made us a target. Everyone wanted a piece of what we'd built. Competitors, copycats, even investors who suddenly saw potential in the female founder narrative they'd previously dismissed. Investment offers began arriving weekly. Some were clearly predatory, seeking controlling interest for minimal capital. Others were more appealing, promising expansion, capital with reasonable terms. You don't need to dilute your ownership, Vivian cautioned. Your revenue growth can fund your expansion if you're patient. But patience was becoming a luxury. A major department store had approached us about a nationwide exclusive collection, requiring production capacity we couldn't achieve without significant capital investment. After careful consideration, I accepted an investment offer from Laurel Ventures, a female-led firm specializing in woman-owned businesses. Their terms preserved my majority ownership and control while providing the capital needed for expansion. We invest in founders, not just companies, explained Marisol Ramirez, Laurel's founding partner. Your vision and values align with ours. We're not looking to change Luminous Legacy. We want to amplify what's already working. With Laurel's backing, we secured a larger production facility and hired a team of women with impressive backgrounds but employment gaps due to responsibilities or career changes. I was a corporate lawyer for 15 years before taking time off to raise my daughter, explained Rena, our new operations director. When I tried to return, no one would hire me. They said I was out of touch. I left engineering after facing constant harassment, shared Maya, who now managed our supply chain. No one would take a chance on me changing industries. These women brought exceptional skills and fresh perspectives to Luminous Legacy. Their gratitude for the opportunity translated into fierce loyalty and innovative problem-solving together. We weathered the growing pains that accompanied our expansion, scaled production without compromising quality, navigated increasingly complex logistics, and built systems to support our rapidly growing team. Through it all, I remained hands-on with product development, personally testing every new scent profile before approval. This wasn't just about maintaining quality, it was about preserving the soul of what I'd created. Your candles still have your fingerprints on them, Vivian observed during a rare quiet moment in my office. Even as everything around you grows and changes. I looked out the window at the bustling production floor, where 24 employees now worked in choreographed precision. Everything has changed, I agreed. Including me. Especially you, she corrected with a smile. And that's the real success story. The email from our accounting firm arrived on a Tuesday morning, nearly 3 years to the day since I'd made my first candle sale on Etsy. Congratulations on reaching $1 million in quarterly revenue, it began. Please find attached your Q2 financial summary and tax projections. I stared at the screen, reading the line 3 times to ensure I wasn't mistaken. $1 million in 3 months. From candles that had once been dismissed as little craft projects, my first instinct was to call my mother, who had supported me unconditionally through the darkest days of my divorce and business launch. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her voice catching, "your grandmother would be so proud. You've created something truly meaningful." That evening, I treated the entire Luminous Legacy team to dinner, raising a toast to their contributions. "This milestone belongs to all of us," I told them, looking around at the 30 faces that now comprised my company. "Every one of you has helped build what we've become." The celebration continued when Nordstrom approached us the following week about a nationwide launch. Their buyer, Caroline, had discovered Luminous Legacy at a boutique in Seattle and fallen in love with our sanctuary candle. "We'd like to feature your core collection in 20 stores initially, with potential expansion to all locations based on performance," she explained during our meeting. The terms were favorable, better than I'd expected from a major retailer. No exclusivity requirements, fair wholesale pricing, and prominent placement in their home goods department. "One more thing," Caroline added as we concluded. "We'd like to feature your founder story in our Women-Led Brands campaign. It would involve a photo shoot and short video about your journey." I hesitated. While I'd become more comfortable as the face of Luminous Legacy, I was still selective about how much of my personal story I shared publicly. "The focus would be on your craftsmanship and entrepreneurial journey," Caroline clarified, sensing my reluctance. "You control the narrative." After consulting with Vivian and our PR team, I agreed. The resulting feature was tasteful and inspiring, focusing on resilience and craft rather than the details of my marriage and divorce. The Nordstrom launch exceeded all projections. Our candles sold out in 15 stores within the first weekend, triggering an expedited reorder and discussions about expansion to additional locations. "This is just the beginning," Caroline told me excitedly. "Our customers are responding to both the product quality and the authentic story behind the brand." I was reviewing the Nordstrom sales data when Jenny knocked on my office door, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "Sarah, there's something you should see." She handed me her tablet, open to a legal filing. "Mark is suing for a portion of Luminous Legacy." The document swam before my eyes, legal language dense and threatening. Mark was claiming that, as my spouse during the company's inception, he was entitled to a percentage of its current value. "He's arguing that your early experimentation and initial Etsy shop occurred during your marriage, using shared resources," explained Tamara, our corporate attorney. "It's a stretch, legally speaking, but not without precedent." "What does he want?" I asked, my voice tight. 30% ownership and a seat on the board," Tamara replied. "Plus back compensation from the date of your separation." The demands were absurd and devastating. After everything, Mark was still trying to claim ownership of my creation, to diminish my achievement by inserting himself into its narrative. "Fight it," I said immediately. "Whatever it costs." As we prepared our legal response, a profile of Luminous Legacy appeared in Women's Business Today magazine, featuring me on the cover with the headline, "The Sweet Smell of Success: How Sarah Winters Built a $1 million brand from a kitchen hobby." The 8-page spread detailed our growth trajectory, sustainable practices, and plans for expansion. A sidebar highlighted our predominantly female workforce and commitment to hiring women returning to the workforce after career gaps. The day the magazine hit newsstands, my phone lit up with a text from Jenny, "Check your email now." The message from our attorney contained a single PDF, a revised settlement offer from Mark's lawyer. He was now asking for a one-time payment of $200,000 in exchange for relinquishing all claims to Luminous Legacy. "He saw the magazine," Tamara explained when I called. "Specifically, the part where you mentioned your prenuptial agreement. I think he's realizing his position isn't as strong as he thought." I laughed without humor. "He didn't think I'd actually fight back. He never does." "What do you want to do?" Tamara asked. I thought about the journey from kitchen experiments to million-dollar quarters, from Mark's mockery to Nordstrom displays. Every step had been earned through my vision, my labor, my resilience. "Tell him no," I replied. "Not the single dollar. I'll see him in court before I give him any part of what I've built." The decision felt like freedom, the final severing of the power Mark had once held over me. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, with the full strength of the company I had created. The conference room in Tamra's law firm felt both oppressive and protective, like a fortress where battles would be waged, but without the bloody aftermath of a real battlefield. Mark sat across the table, flanked by his attorney, a silver-haired man whose custom suit and dismissive smiles suggested he was accustomed to intimidating opponents. "My client is being extremely reasonable," he began, sliding a document across the polished surface. 20% ownership, no board seat, and we drop all claims related to bot compensation. Tamara didn't touch the paper. Ms. Winters has already made her position clear. Luminous Legacy was founded after the separation using her personal funds. Mr. Winters contributed nothing financially or otherwise to its creation or growth. "That's not entirely accurate," Mark interjected, leaning forward. "I supported Sarah throughout our marriage. I paid the mortgage while she experimented with her hobby. Those were marital resources being used." I met his gaze directly. "You also told me repeatedly that it was a waste of time and money. You can't claim to have supported something you actively discouraged." His attorney raised a placating hand. "The law doesn't concern itself with emotional support, only financial entanglements. And the fact remains, the initial business activities occurred during the marriage." "Actually," Tamara countered, "the business was legally established after the separation. What occurred during the marriage was a hobby, as Mr. Winters himself characterized it numerous times in writing." She produced printouts of text messages and emails where Mark had referred to my candle making as that hobby, and her little craft project. "Furthermore," she continued, "we have documentation that Ms. Winters used her personal savings account established prior to the marriage to fund both her supplies and her first commercial space." Mark's face darkened. "What personal account?" "We had joint finances." "Not entirely," I replied quietly. "I maintained a separate account that predated our marriage. It's referenced in our prenuptial agreement, the one you insisted upon to protect your future earnings from my claims." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The very agreement Mark had created to protect his assets now shielded mine. His attorney requested a brief recess, during which I could hear heated whispers from the hallway. When they returned, the silver-haired lawyer's confidence had visibly diminished. "We're prepared to accept a one-time settlement of $100,000. And will drop all claims to ownership." Tamara looked to me. We'd discussed this possibility, prepared for it. I shook my head slightly. "No," she stated firmly. "Ms. Winters will not be offering any settlement. The prenuptial agreement is clear on separate property and businesses established post-separation. This will get ugly if we go to court," Mark warned, color rising in his face. "I'll testify about how you neglected our marriage for your business, how you prioritized candles over our future." For a moment, the old instinct to placate, to avoid his anger, but it passed quickly, replaced by a steady certainty. "That's your right," I replied. "And I'll testify about how you belittled my passion and dismissed my potential. How you gave me an ultimatum to choose between my dreams and your ego. The difference is, I have evidence to support my testimony." 3 weeks later, we sat in a courtroom as the judge reviewed our case. Mark testified first, painting himself as a supportive husband whose wife had become obsessed with a hobby, then used it to abandon their marriage. "I encouraged her creativity," he claimed. "I just wanted her to be realistic about it. Instead, she chose candles over our relationship." When my turn came, I spoke plainly about the years of dismissal, the ultimatum, the mockery. Then Tamara presented our evidence. Text messages, emails, testimony from friends who had witnessed his behavior, and most damaging, a video Jenny had taken at a dinner party where Mark had laughed about my craft fair hobby, and how no one would pay for homemade candles. The judge, a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and a nonsense manner, asked pointed questions about our finances, the timing of Luminous Legacy's establishment, and the specific language in our prenuptial agreement. After 2 days of testimony, she delivered her ruling. The court finds that Luminous Legacy LLC was established after the separation, using funds that were explicitly defined as separate property in the prenuptial agreement. Furthermore, Mr. Winters' claim of contribution to the business is unsupported by evidence. In fact, the evidence suggests he actively discouraged the endeavor. She looked directly at Mark. "This appears to be a case of regret rather than entitlement. The motion for ownership interest in Luminous Legacy is denied. The plaintiff will receive no compensation." Outside the courthouse, rain fell in gentle sheets, washing the city clean. I stood under the concrete overhang, watching Mark and his attorney hurry to a waiting car, shoulders hunched in defeat. "It's over," Tamara said, joining me. "Completely and legally over." That evening, I sat alone in my office, overlooking the production floor of Luminous Legacy. The space was quiet, the machines still, but evidence of the day's work remained lined up, candles cooling on racks, packaging materials neatly stacked, order forms ready for tomorrow. I opened my laptop and began to write an email to my team, 30 individuals who had joined me on this journey, who had believed in my vision even when those closest to me couldn't see it. "Today marks the end of a chapter and the beginning of another," I wrote. "Luminous Legacy is officially, unquestionably, undeniably ours. What we build from here belongs to all of us who have contributed to its light." I paused, considering the truth of those words. What had begun as my escape, my rebellion, my salvation, had grown into something that now supported dozens of families, that touched thousands of homes with moments of peace and beauty. Mark had wanted a piece of that success, but he had never understood that the true value wasn't in the revenue or the valuation. It was in the creation itself, the act of bringing something new into the world and nurturing it into full bloom. That was something no court could divide, no settlement could diminish. That belonged only to those who had earned it. The email arrived 6 months after the court victory, as I was reviewing applications for our expanded production team. "Dear Ms. Winters," it began. "My name is Abigail Torres. I recently left my husband after 10 years in an emotionally abusive marriage. Your story has been my inspiration during this difficult transition. I've always loved making natural skincare products, but was told repeatedly it was a silly hobby with no future. I'm writing to ask if you might have 15 minutes to share any advice for someone just starting out. I understand you're incredibly busy, so no pressure if this isn't possible." I'd received similar messages before, dozens, in fact, since the Women's Business Today profile. But something about Abigail's words resonated deeply. I found myself scheduling a video call for the following week. Abigail was in her late 30s. With warm eyes and a hesitant smile, she showed me her handcrafted lotions and facial oils, explaining the natural ingredients and processes with the same passion I'd once had describing my candles to Jenny. "These are beautiful," I told her truthfully. "Your attention to detail is evident." "Thank you," she replied, her voice gaining confidence. "I've been making them for friends for years, but I never thought about selling them until I read about your journey." By the end of our call, I'd offered to connect her with Vivian for mentoring and suggested some local boutiques that might be interested in her products. But, as I closed my laptop, a larger idea began taking shape. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with our executive team. "I want to create a grant program for women entrepreneurs," I announced. "Specifically for those transitioning from difficult personal situations who need seed funding to launch businesses." The idea was met with immediate enthusiasm, particularly from our CFO, Dina, who had escaped financial abuse in her previous marriage. "This isn't just charity," she pointed out. "It's economic empowerment. And from a business perspective, it reinforces our brand values in an authentic way." Within 3 months, we launched the Luminous Legacy Foundation with an initial commitment of $500,000 that grants would provide not just funding but mentorship, business development, support, and for local recipients, potential incubator space. In our expanded headquarters, Abigail Torres became our first grant recipient, receiving $25,000 to launch her skincare line, along with packaging consultation from our design team and introduction to our retail contacts. The foundation quickly became my passion project. I carved out time each week to review applications personally, often recognizing my own story reflected in these women's experiences, the dismissed dreams, the financial constraints, the need to prove someone wrong. But the foundation was just the beginning. As Luminous Legacy continued to grow, now with distribution in over 300 retail locations and a robust direct-to-consumer business, I implemented internal policies that reflected the values behind our success. Every employee received stock options, regardless of position. We instituted flexible schedules to accommodate parents and caregivers. Our production facility included an on-site childcare center, and most significantly, we established an apprenticeship program specifically designed for women with employment gaps or career transitions. Our hiring philosophy is simple. I explained to a reporter doing a feature on ethical business practices. We look for potential rather than perfect resumes. Some of our most valuable team members came to us after years away from the workforce, bringing life experience that's impossible to quantify on paper. The reporter seemed surprised. Isn't that risky from a business perspective? The greater risk, I countered, is missing out on exceptional talent because of rigid expectations. My own journey taught me that sometimes the most powerful contributions come from people who've been told they have nothing to offer. The article, when published, generated another wave of applications both for jobs and foundation grants. It also caught the attention of several business schools, leading to invitations to speak about ethical entrepreneurship and inclusive hiring practices, standing at a podium at Wharton, looking out at faces eager to learn about building successful businesses. I thought about how far I'd come from that apartment kitchen. The most valuable lesson I've learned, I told the students, is that success isn't just measured in revenue or market share. It's measured in the impact you have on the lives you touch: your employees, your customers, your community. Building a profitable business and creating positive change aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they can powerfully reinforce each other. A young woman raised her hand during the Q&A. Did you always plan to create a socially responsible company, or did that evolve as you grew? The question made me smile. Honestly, when I started, I was just trying to survive emotionally and financially. But as Luminous Legacy grew, I realized I had an opportunity to build the kind of workplace I wished had existed when I was struggling. Every policy we implement, every grant we award, is a way of saying to someone else, your light matters. We see it, even if others don't. Later that evening, as my driver took me back to the airport, I received a text from Abigail with a photo of her products on the shelves of a local boutique. First retail placement, she wrote. Couldn't have done it without your belief in me. I looked at the image of her beautifully packaged skincare line, remembering the pride I'd felt seeing my candles on store shelves for the first time, the specific joy of creation validated, of potential recognized. This is just the beginning. I texted back, keep going. The world needs your light. 5 years after that first Etsy sale, I stood in the center of what would become the first Luminous Legacy flagship store. The space, a converted industrial building in downtown Portland, still smelled of sawdust and fresh paint, but I could already envision what it would become. The testing bar will go here, I explained to Alina, gesturing to a long wall. Customers can experience every scent profile before purchasing, and this corner will be our custom blending station, where people can create personalized candles. Alina nodded, making notes on her tablet, and the story wall. There, I pointed to the exposed brick at the back of the store. Large format, photographs showing our production process, interspersed with customer stories about what Luminous Legacy means to them. We'd collected hundreds of these testimonials over the years, stories of candles that had scented new homes after difficult transitions, had burned during job interviews and first dates, had provided comfort during illness and grief. The flagship store would celebrate not just our products, but these moments of connection. The retail expansion was just one aspect of our growth strategy. Our core candle line had been joined by reed diffusers, room sprays, and car fresheners, all featuring our signature scent profiles. We'd also launched a home goods collection, including throw blankets, ceramic vessels, and artisanal matches. Each item reflecting our commitment to sustainable luxury. The scope of our operation sometimes left me breathless. What had begun as a solitary pursuit in a cramped kitchen now occupied a 30,000 square foot production facility with 75 employees. Our revenue had grown exponentially, exceeding $15 million in the previous year. Most surprising of all was the international interest in our brand. We'd received distribution inquiries from Canada, the UK, Japan, and Australia, each presenting both opportunity and logistical challenges. The European Union requires different safety testing than we do here, explained Maya during our weekly leadership meeting, and shipping glass containers internationally requires specialized packaging to prevent breakage. We decided to start with Canada, geographically closest, with similar regulations to the US, while developing a phased approach for other markets. As our business expanded, so did media interest in our story. The female founder narrative that had once seemed limiting now opened doors to valuable exposure. I'd become more comfortable sharing certain aspects of my journey. recognizing that my experience could inspire others facing similar challenges. When Forbes requested an interview for their Self-Made Women issue, I agreed, under the condition that the piece focus primarily on our business model and growth strategy rather than my divorce. The reporter, Sophia Chen, proved to be refreshingly thorough in her research about Luminous Legacy's ethical manufacturing practices and employee ownership structure. Her resulting article, From Kitchen Table to Empire: How Sarah Winters Built the $15 million Brand on Authenticity, became our most significant press coverage to date. "What's next for Luminous Legacy?" she asked as our interview concluded. "Continued intentional growth," I replied. "We're expanding our product lines and retail presence, but never at the expense of our core values or quality standards. Success has given us the freedom to grow at our own pace, prioritizing sustainability over speed. What I didn't share because the plans weren't yet finalized was my most personal project yet. For months, I'd been in negotiations to purchase my childhood home outside Portland, where I'd first learned candle making with my grandmother. The modest farmhouse and surrounding 5 acres had come on the market unexpectedly, and I'd immediately recognized the opportunity it presented. With careful renovation, it could become both an innovation lab for new product development and a retreat center for the entrepreneurs we supported through our foundation. The purchase closed 2 weeks after the Forbes article was published. Standing in my grandmother's former kitchen, now empty and awaiting transformation, I felt her presence strongly, her patience as she taught me to test wick sizes, her joy in experimenting with scent combinations, her belief that creating beautiful things was a worthy pursuit. "We've come full circle, Grandma," I whispered, running my hand along the windowsill where she'd once cooled her handmade candles. The renovation would take nearly a year, but the result exceeded even my vision. The Luminous Legacy Innovation Center preserved the farmhouse's historic character while incorporating state-of-the-art research facilities and comfortable accommodation for visiting entrepreneurs and artisans. Its first official event was a weekend retreat for our foundation's grant recipients. 15 women at various stages of building businesses, ranging from sustainable fashion to artisanal foods to tech startups. For 3 days, they participated in workshops led by industry experts, received personalized business coaching, and connected with potential mentors and collaborators. On the final evening, as we gathered around a bonfire behind the farmhouse, Abigail Torres, whose skincare line was now carried in spas across 3 states, raised her glass in a toast to Sarah, who showed us that our passions aren't just hobbies, they're potential legacies waiting to be built. The women applauded, their faces illuminated by firelight, looking around the circle at these entrepreneurs, each with her own story of challenge and perseverance. I felt a profound sense of rightness, of purpose fulfilled. This, even more than the $1 million quarters or international expansion or glossy magazine features, was the true measure of what Luminous Legacy had become: catalyst for transformation, a vehicle for empowerment, a community of light. Bringers. Later that night, after the guests had retired to their rooms, I sat alone on the porch swing that had been my grandmother's favorite spot. Above me, stars punctuated the clear Oregon sky. Below, in the valley, Portland's lights glimmered in the distance. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenny: "International shipping contracts approved. Australia and UK launch set for spring. We did it, boss." I smiled at the simplicity of those words. We did it. From one woman at a kitchen table to a global brand, from a dismissed hobby to a celebrated enterprise, from a stifled wife to a woman fully, unapologetically herself. We did it, and we were just getting started. The Innovation Center had been operational for 6 months when I received an unexpected email from my former mother-in-law, Elaine. "Sarah, I hope this finds you well. I've been following your success from afar and wanted to congratulate you. Your candles are beautiful. I was wondering if you might have time for coffee next time I'm in Portland. There's something I'd like to return to you." Mark's mother had never been unkind to me, but she'd sided firmly with her son during our divorce. This overture, years later, caught me off guard. We met at a quiet cafe near the flagship store. Elaine looked older, more subdued than I remembered. After awkward pleasantries, she handed me a small wooden box. "I found this when cleaning out the attic. I believe it belonged to your grandmother." Inside was my grandmother, Eleanor's handwritten recipe book, the original collection of candle formulas and scent combinations I thought had been lost during the divorce. Alongside it lay her silver mixing spoon, engraved with her initials. Mark must have packed it by mistake, Elaine explained. I only discovered it recently. Tears filled my eyes as I ran my fingers over my grandmother's familiar handwriting. Thank you for returning this. It means more than you know. Elaine hesitated, then added, I've seen your candles at Nordstrom. The sanctuary one reminds me of something Eleanor would have created. The unexpected validation from Mark's mother left me speechless. She asked about the business, listened attentively to my description of the Innovation Center, and seemed genuinely pleased by my success. As we prepared to leave, she said quietly, I should have supported you more during the difficult times. I'm sorry I didn't. Her apology, though years too late, felt like the closing of a wound I hadn't realized was still open. The recovered recipe book inspired a new collection. I spent weeks in the Innovation Center's development lab, recreating and refining my grandmother's original formulas using sustainable modern ingredients. The process felt like conversation across time, Alina's creativity speaking to mine, her legacy flowing into Luminous Legacy. I named the collection Heritage, with each candle inspired by a specific recipe from her book. The signature piece, Light, combined her favorite bergamot and sandalwood with subtle notes of vanilla and amber. Its vessel, a hand-blown glass with delicate swirls of blue and gold, was inspired by a brooch she'd always worn. 2 months after the Heritage collection launched, I was examining the new retail displays in our flagship store when a sales associate approached. There's someone here asking for you specifically, she whispered. She says she's a friend of your ex-husband. Puzzled, I walked to the front to find a stylish woman in her 30s examining our best-selling reclamation candle. Sarah, I'm Caroline. I'm dating Mark. Well, was dating Mark. My guard immediately rose. What can I do for you? Caroline smiled ruefully. Nothing, really. I just wanted to meet the woman behind these amazing candles. I've been using them for years, long before I met Mark. When he mentioned he'd been married to that candle woman, I couldn't believe it. How is he? I asked, more out of politeness than genuine interest. Honestly, still resentful, still talking about what could have been. It's partly why we broke up, she shrugged. He couldn't stop comparing his life to yours. The knowledge should have felt vindicating. Instead, I felt a strange mixture of pity and liberation. Mark's opinion, once so dominant in my life, now held no power over me. I'm sorry it didn't work out, I said, meaning it. Would you like a tour of the store? We just launched a new collection I'm particularly proud of. As I showed her the Heritage display, explaining my grandmother's influence, Caroline remarked, It's amazing how things come full circle, isn't it? The skills she taught you, now transformed into all this. Looking around at what Luminous Legacy had become, a thriving business, a supportive community, a vehicle for creativity, and Chanjai couldn't help but agree. Yes, I replied. Sometimes you have to leave something behind to truly find your way back to what matters. The 7th anniversary of Luminous Legacy's founding coincided with the opening of our 3rd retail location at light-filled space in Seattle's bustling Pike Place Market. The celebration brought together employees, retail partners, and foundation grant recipients for an evening of reflection and anticipation. When I made my first candle in a cramped apartment kitchen, I couldn't have imagined standing here tonight. I told the gathered crowd, but each of you has helped transform that solitary moment into a shared journey. Luminous Legacy isn't just my story anymore. It belongs to all of us who have contributed to its light. After the speeches and champagne toast, I found a quiet moment with Vivian, whose mentorship had been instrumental from the earliest days. You've created something remarkable, she said, surveying the bustling celebration. Not just a successful business, but a genuine community. I had excellent guidance, I replied, squeezing her hand. She smiled, then added, with characteristic directness, So what's next for Sarah Winters? The business is thriving, the foundation is making real impact. What about your personal happiness? This question caught me off guard. For years, Luminous Legacy had been my primary relationship, consuming my attention and energy. Dating had seemed like an unnecessary complication, and besides, the divorce had left invisible scars that had taken time to heal. I'm perfectly content, I assured her. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Content isn't the same as fulfilled. Don't you ever get lonely in that beautiful house of yours? Before I could formulate a response, we were interrupted by the arrival of new guests. The architect who had redesigned the Innovation Center, David Chen, accompanied by his teenage daughter, Lily. "Sorry we're late," David apologized. Lily's cello recital ran long. "It was worth the wait," Lily added. "I nailed the DVOK piece." "I'm sure you did," I replied warmly. I'd met Lily several times during the renovation process. Impressed by her artistic sensibility and quiet confidence, David handed me a small package wrapped in simple brown paper, a belated thank you for your patience during construction delays. Inside was a handcrafted ceramic vessel elegant in its simplicity, glazed in a deep blue that shifted to amber when held to the light. "It's beautiful," I breathed, turning it in my hands. "Dad made it," Lily announced proudly. "He does ceramics in his spare time. Mom always said he should have been an artist instead of an architect." David's face colored slightly. My ex-wife has strong opinions about many things. Something in his tone, rueful without bitterness, resonated with me. Over the course of the evening, we found ourselves in easy conversation about creative processes, the challenge of balancing artistic vision with practical constraints, and the unexpected joy of building something lasting. When I mentioned the upcoming expansion of our Foundation's mentorship program, David offered thoughtful suggestions based on his experience teaching at the local community college. "You should visit one of his classes," Lily interjected. "The students would love to hear from someone who built a successful creative business." "I'd be happy to arrange it if you're interested," David added. 2 weeks later, I found myself addressing his sustainable design class, sharing Luminous Legacy's journey from kitchen hobby to international brand. The students' questions were insightful, their enthusiasm contagious. Afterward, David suggested coffee, which turned into lunch, which evolved into regular conversations about everything from business ethics to favorite films to childhood memories. His approach was refreshingly different from Mark's, genuinely curious about my work, supportive without being possessive, comfortable in his own accomplishments without needing to diminish mine. 6 months after the Seattle store opening, David joined me for the launch of our latest initiative, Luminous Ventures, a business incubator offering workspace, mentorship, and seed funding to women entrepreneurs. That as we toured the converted warehouse that would house the program, he asked, "Do you ever marvel at how different your life is now from what you once imagined?" I considered the question, thinking back to the Sarah who had once believed her creative passion was merely a hobby, who had accepted diminishment as the cost of companionship. "Every day," I replied honestly. "But I'm learning that's the nature of light. It doesn't follow predictable paths. It bends, reflects, transforms whatever it touches." David smiled, taking my hand in his, spoken like a true creator of luminous things. His touch, warm, respectful, undemanding, felt like yet another new beginning in a journey filled with unexpected possibilities. That evening, as we shared dinner at my farmhouse, surrounded by the legacy of my grandmother and the fruits of my own creation, I realized Vivian had been right. Success and independence were precious achievements, but sharing them with someone who truly saw me, my potential, my passion, my worth, added a dimension of joy I hadn't known was missing. The email from Business Insider arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning as I reviewed quarterly projections with our finance team. "Ms. Winters, we're doing a feature on entrepreneurs whose former critics have faced business failures. Our research indicates your ex-husband's, Marcus Candle Company, filed for bankruptcy last month. Would you be available for comment?" I stared at the screen, an unexpected wave of emotions washing over me. Mark's Candle business's attempt to replicate my success had apparently failed. The reporter clearly hoped for a triumphant statement, perhaps a barbed comment about karmic justice. Instead, I declined the interview request with a brief, professional response. Mark's failure wasn't my victory to celebrate, and publicly commenting would only extend a connection I'd worked hard to sever. Later that evening, I mentioned the email to David as we prepared dinner in my kitchen. "You're not even a little satisfied?" he asked, chopping vegetables beside me. I considered the question honestly. Not satisfaction exactly, more like confirmation. His business failed not because candle making is a silly hobby, but because he approached it as a scheme rather than a craft worthy of dedication. David nodded thoughtfully. "The difference between creating from passion versus imitation?" Exactly. He wanted the outcome without the journey. The subject shifted to more pleasant topics, but later that night, I found myself reflecting on how completely my perception had changed. 5 years ago, Mark's opinion had held such power over me. Now, His success or failure was merely a footnote in a story that had long since moved beyond him. This perspective was further reinforced when Entrepreneur magazine included Luminous Legacy in their annual Impact 50 list, companies demonstrating exceptional growth while maintaining strong social responsibility initiatives. The accompanying profile highlighted our foundation's work, particularly our recently launched apprenticeship program for women transitioning from incarceration back into the workforce. The initiative was inspired by a letter I received from Teresa Martinez, who discovered candlemaking while serving a 3-year sentence. I explained to the reporter. Upon release, she found traditional employment paths closed due to her record. Our program provides technical training, paid apprenticeships, and eventual placement either within our company or with partner businesses. The article generated significant attention, including an invitation to speak at a national conference on ethical entrepreneurship. Standing at the podium before hundreds of business leaders, I shared the evolution of Luminous Legacy, from personal passion to platform for change. Success gave us resources, but it also gave us responsibility, I concluded. Every business, regardless of size, has the potential to illuminate paths for others. The question isn't whether you can make an impact, but whether you choose to. The speech received a standing ovation and led to partnership inquiries from companies seeking to implement similar initiatives. What had begun as a single candle poured in a kitchen had sparked a movement that now extended far beyond me. This broader impact was brought home when Teresa Martinez, now our production supervisor, led a tour for potential retail partners through our main facility. "These candles changed my life," she told them, gesturing to the bustling production floor, where 20 former apprentices now held permanent positions, not just because they provided employment, but because they represented possibility when I most needed to believe in it. Watching her confident, articulate, passionate about quality and craftsmanship, felt a profound sense of rightness. Luminous Legacy had become exactly what its name suggested, a light that would continue beyond any individual, illuminating paths for others to follow. This evolution from personal validation to lasting impact seemed to complete a circle. The business that had begun as an escape from diminishment had become a vehicle for amplifying others' worth. The passion that had been dismissed as just a hobby now supported dozens of families and touched countless homes. In the company's conference room, above the long table where we made decisions affecting hundreds of employees and customers, hung a simple framed quote, my grandmother Eleanor's words, transcribed from her recipe book. "Scents are powerful magic. They can heal hearts and bring comfort when words fail." Once, I'd believed those words applied only to the candles themselves. Now I understood they described something larger, the transformative power of bringing one's authentic light into the world, regardless of those who would diminish it. That light, once kindled, could never truly be extinguished. It could only grow, spread, and illuminate paths previously hidden in darkness. 10 years after pouring my first candle, I stood in the gleaming lobby of Luminous Legacy's international headquarters, a renovated historic building in downtown Portland that housed our corporate offices, flagship store, development lab, and a public exhibition space, celebrating the art and science of candlemaking. The milestone anniversary had prompted reflection on how far we'd come, from a one-woman operation to a global brand with over 200 employees, distribution in 11 countries, and annual revenue exceeding $40 million. But numbers told only part of the story. The true measure of our impact resided in less quantifiable outcomes: the 73 women entrepreneurs who had received foundation grants, the rehabilitation program that had transitioned former inmates into skilled artisans, the sustainable sourcing initiatives that supported small-scale farmers across 3 continents. To commemorate the anniversary, we'd launched our most ambitious project yet, the Luminous Community, a mixed-use development adjacent to our headquarters that combined affordable housing for employees, subsidized retail space for foundation grant recipients, a childcare center, and community gardens. "This represents the next evolution of our mission," I explained to the gathered media at the groundbreaking ceremony, "creating not just products or even opportunities, but a sustainable ecosystem where creativity and commerce fuel positive change." David stood nearby, our 2-year-old daughter, Emma, perched on his shoulders to better see the proceedings. The path to motherhood had been unexpected, a joyful surprise in my early 40s, embraced with the same determination I'd applied to building my business. Balancing leadership of a growing enterprise, with parenting presented new challenges, but also deepened my commitment to creating a company culture that supported whole lives, not just professional productivity. We've implemented policies I wish had existed when I was building this company as a single woman. I often told new employees, flexible schedules, paid family leave, on-site childcare, these aren't luxuries or even benefits. They're essential infrastructure for sustainable success. This philosophy extended beyond our walls through our advocacy work with industry associations and legislative initiatives. Luminous Legacy had become a case study in how profitability and purpose could reinforce rather than contradict each other. After the groundbreaking ceremony, as the crowd dispersed and workers began preliminary site preparation, I found a quiet moment with my mother, who had flown in for the occasion. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she said, watching Emma toward the ceremonial shovel, determined to take her own turn digging, not just of the business, but of the woman you've become. "I wish she could have seen all this," I replied, gesturing to the bustling headquarters behind us. My mother smiled. "She does see it, every time someone lights one of your candles, every time you mentor another woman entrepreneur, every time you stand up for what you believe matters." Later that evening, after Emma was asleep and David was catching up on project deadlines, I slipped into my home office, the converted sunroom overlooking the garden where now grew many of the herbs used in our botanical candle line. On my desk sat a simple clay candle holder, Emma's first art project, proudly presented despite its wobbly construction. Beside it stood an elegant silver candlestick that had been my grandmother's, and next to that, the prototype for our newest product line, solar-powered lanterns, designed for regions without reliable electricity. 3 generations of light bring, each in our own way. I lit a candle, Eleanor's light, from our heritage collection, and opened my laptop to review final edits on my upcoming book, Illumination: How to Build a Business and a Life on Your Own Terms. The memoir had been challenging to write, requiring me to revisit painful chapters I'd long since moved beyond. But its purpose wasn't to dwell on past hurts or even celebrate present successes. Rather, it aimed to provide a beacon for others navigating their own difficult transitions, uncertain of their worth or potential. "Your story isn't over when someone else dismisses it," I'd written in the conclusion. "That's often precisely when it's beginning. The question isn't whether your passion has value, it's whether you have the courage to value it yourself, especially when those closest to you cannot or will not see its light." As the candle flame flickered, casting moving shadows across my grandmother's handwritten recipes framed on the wall, I felt a profound sense of continuity, of having honored her legacy while creating my own. The journey from dismissed hobby to global brand had never been about proving Mark wrong. It had been about proving myself right, about reclaiming the vision and value he couldn't diminish unless I allowed him to. That reclamation had ignited something larger than I could have imagined, a legacy of light that would continue long after any individual candle had burned its course. The invitation to deliver the commencement address at my alma mater arrived 15 years to the month after Mark had first mocked my candle making in our kitchen, standing before thousands of graduates and their families. I looked out at the sea of expectant faces, young people poised at the threshold of their own journeys, uncertain of the paths ahead. "The most valuable lesson I've learned," I told them, "isn't about business strategy or brand building, though those skills have their place. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't determined by others' perception of it. The passion someone else dismisses as trivial may be the very thing that changes your life and potentially many others." I shared the condensed version of my story, the kitchen experiments, the painful separation, the gradual building of Luminous Legacy into an enterprise now valued at over $100 million, with products in 17 countries and initiatives that had supported hundreds of women entrepreneurs. "But the numbers and accolades aren't the true measure of success," I continued. "The real achievement lies in creating something authentic, something that embodies your values and amplifies your unique light in the world." From the stage, could see Emma, now 12, sitting between David and my mother in the front row. Her proud smile reminded me of all we passed to the next generation, not just material success, but the intangible legacy of resilience, self-belief, and the courage to forge one's own path. After the ceremony, as we walked across the sun-dappled campus, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Mom, did you always know your candles would become so important?" The question made me smile. "Not at all. I just knew they were important to me. that they brought me joy and peace when little else did. The rest unfolded step by step, choice by choice, like when you chose candles over your first husband, she asked with the directness of pre-adolescence. David raised an eyebrow, always amused by our daughter's unfiltered questions. Not exactly, I replied carefully. I chose myself, my potential, my values, my right to create something meaningful. The candles were simply the form the choice took. Emma considered this. I'm glad you did, she said finally. Otherwise, we wouldn't have Dad or Luminous Legacy or the foundation or anything. The simplicity of her observation struck me. All that had grown from that initial choice, my marriage to David, our daughter, the business that supported thousands of families, the foundation that had launched dozens of women-owned enterprises, none of it would exist if I had accepted Mark's diminishment as the final word on my worth. That evening, after returning home to Portland, I received an email that brought the journey full circle. The subject line read simply, "Thank you, dear Sarah," it began. "You won't remember me, but I attended your very first candle workshop at the Portland Artisan Market 7 years ago. You were just starting to expand Luminous Legacy, and you spoke about finding your voice through creative work. I was in an abusive marriage at the time, convinced I had nothing of value to offer. Your story gave me courage to leave, to start small with my own textile design business, and eventually to build the life I have now, one where I'm valued for exactly who I am. Today I learned my company is being acquired by a major home goods brand. The journey from that workshop to this moment hasn't been easy, but it's been mine. Thank you for showing me what was possible. Your light helped me find my own." The email was signed Michelle Parker, founder, Woven Narratives. I sat with the message for a long time, thinking about all the invisible connections that link our stories, how one person's journey of reclamation becomes another's permission to begin their own. This was the true power of the path I'd traveled, not the business empire or personal wealth, but the ripple effect of choosing one's own worth in a world often quick to assign it. Later, preparing for bed, I paused before the antique mirror that had been my grandmother's, studying the reflection that looked back at me, no longer the uncertain young wife seeking approval, nor even the determined entrepreneur with something to prove, just a woman who had found her light and, in sharing it, had illuminated possibilities for others. In the quiet of my bedroom, I lit a single candle, the scent a blend of lavender and vanilla, just like that first experimental batch in my kitchen so many years ago. The flame caught, steadied, grew stronger, casting its gentle glow across the room, transforming darkness into soft, golden light. Like me, like all of us who find the courage to value our passions, our potential, our inherent worth, especially when those closest to us cannot or will not see it. One small flame, illuminating worlds of possibility. If this story resonates with you, please like, subscribe to our channel, and share your own experiences of turning criticism into motivation in the comments below. Remember, your passion isn't just anything, it's the spark that could light your way to an extraordinary future.